All right, we're here with Fran Rosch, CEO of ForgeRock. I'm really excited for this conversation. Fran, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Blake. It's great to be here.
So maybe before we get into, we've got a lot of cool stuff I know product folks will be interested to hear about today. Maybe before we dive in, give us the quick overview of yourself, what your kind of career path has looked like, and then maybe a little context around, ForgeRock and kind of what's going on with the company there.
Absolutely. Great. Well, let's see. I've been the CEO here for ForgeRock for about 5 years. Prior to that, I spent about 8 years at Symantec doing different parts of enterprise and consumer security. Prior to that, about a decade at Verisign doing a lot of identity and authentication. So a couple of jobs before that, but they're not really relevant. They make me sound too old. So I think really focus on the last 20 plus years really in the cybersecurity and the identity space. A lot of history. At ForgeRock, we are a digital identity company. So we help enterprise customers create identity experiences that are simple and easy and frictionless, as well as secure and private and compliant. We've got about 1,300 enterprise customers, about 1,000 employees. We're headquartered here in California. We're a public company. And growth is our mindset. So that's a little bit kind of about the company, my background. I would say I've had a lot of different jobs, which makes a good CEO. I've had a chance to be on the sales side, the product side, of an engineering degree, and I spent a lot of time in product management, of which I'm very passionate. So that's a little bit about my background, the company in a nutshell.
Excellent. And I love talking to company leaders who have a product background. So let's dive right in on product. Because a lot of, I think, product leaders, whether you're an advanced product manager, a head of product, you're running the whole product org, they don't always have that context of what does the CEO want from me? How can I best communicate? What is a good sort of relationship between CEO and head of product? So what are some of the things you've looked for over the years or maybe would advise other, product folks on in that regard?
Sure. Look, ultimately, if you're a technology company, Silicon Valley technology company, you're going to win or die based on the quality of your tech. Do your product solve customer jobs, customer problems better than the competition? So at the heart, you are a technology company. And yeah, you need a great sales team, but a great sales team can't sell a crappy product. Or a great support organization can't support one. So ultimately, the success of your company really rides on that product team and that technology. And so, that's a foundational understanding, I think, of any business. What I look for my product leader is, someone who does a couple of different things. First of all, who's very grounded in the market, right? Understanding what customers are looking for, not only today, but what they might want 2, 3, or 4 years from now, because given our development cycles, you've got to have a view of that future. So someone who's very grounded in the market and has a strong point of view. And then I think second is someone who is, really good operationally, who can really, drive engineering and to be able to produce those products and services on time and on schedule, never perfect, but as close as possible. I think a third mindset for me is really one of innovation. A product leader who's not just about incremental improvements, and we all get buried with customer requests, but someone who's really thinking about how to do things creatively, differently, and innovatively. And then the last thing, Blake, for me, from a product leader, is someone who is a bit of a general manager and understands that their product won't be successful unless they have great relationships with the go-to-market side of the business and the support side of the business, and has kind of a P&L view of the company.
Yeah, and maybe let's dive into the company strategy side of that, because it does feel like once you're running the whole kind of show as a product leader, communicating with the board, communicating with the CEO, you really need to connect it with company strategy in a big way. And maybe a lot of PMs kind of struggle to get there or sort of see past product and see the full kind of aperture of what's going on with the company and the market. What are maybe some good ways you've seen where kind of product folks can level up strategically to kind of understand the whole company
It's a great point because I actually don't think there's a big difference between product strategy and company strategy, especially for a technology company. Our product strategy is our company strategy in some way. And let me give you a kind of a story here at ForgeRock. When I joined the company 5 years ago, had grown very quickly, but our growth had kind of plateaued, flattened out, which is why they, brought in a new CEO to reignite that growth. The first thing I did was a strategy project. All right. I said, okay, this was in Q3 of 2018. I said, I'm not going to try to really run the business for 3 months. I'm going to let it continue to run. It's been running without me. I'm really going to focus on the strategy, make sure it's right. So we went through a strategy project, and it really was, we had a cross-functional group, but it really was the product leader, a guy named Peter Barker, Chief Product Officer, and a couple of the product leaders and myself. And what we did is we started out, again, with that grounding ourselves in the market. We interviewed our customers. We interviewed our partners. We interviewed industry analysts. We interviewed our engineers, our salespeople. We collected a lot of information, what was working, what wasn't, what they wanted for the future. And we actually, Blake, we told ourselves, don't try to solution yet. Just be in that data collection mode. Don't try to jump to conclusions until you have it all done. Then once that was done, we looked at that pile of information data we collected and said, okay, what are the key insights? For us, it was ForgeRock had been we sold software, on-prem software. Our customers wanted cloud, right? They wanted a SaaS service. That came out loud and clear. Our product was very flexible. You could do a lot with it from an identity experience standpoint. They wanted out-of-the-box solutions so they get fast time to value. They didn't want to deal with that complexity, right? They felt like we were delivering software and then they were kind of on their own to deliver. They wanted a customer success. We were all in it together. And so we created a strategy that resulted in a new product roadmap, a new direction, hiring new kinds of people. But it was a very methodical process of starting with market back, customer back, and then a lot of that, the other real important element of that then is how do you communicate and lead a company around that new strategy that gets developed?
I love the sort of operative verb you used there was interview. And I'm sure there was all sorts of qualitative and quantitative data collection, but I have noticed as I talk to really sophisticated product leaders, there's kind of the quantitative and the qualitative, but there's a real lean in on qualitative. And maybe folks can kind of go down rabbit holes or sort of get the temptation to solve everything with quantitative, and we're going to have dashboards and we're going to have, queries and instrumentation, and we'll just be able to data driven this whole thing. I love how you sort of led with, we're going to talk to customers. We're going to talk to the market. We're going to talk to, talk, interview. And I guess I'm just sort of, do you look more for sort of the qualitative insights when you're at that level of strategy, or how do you kind of balance qualitative and quantitative?
Yeah. It is a balance. I love data and I love collecting. You have to reside on data. But especially external data, I think is so questionable when you hear oh, the TAM for this is $5 billion. Really? I don't know where the analyst gets that. So I think you take that data, but I do think the qualitative is important. And we used to, we do things kind of called follow me homes. I don't know if you've ever heard of that term, but
no,
you actually kind of follow a customer home. And when I was at Symantec, I was running the consumer business. And you just sat there with your mouth shut and you watched the customer use your product. You just watch that. You want to jump in. You want to say, no, click over there and you'll get what you're looking for. But you just watch your customer use your product. It's amazing what you can learn from that. And I think these interviews are important. If you talk to, 5 customers, but when you get to talk to 10, 15, 20, it's amazing that by that point, you're getting so much of the repetition. Okay, now I get it. They want a cloud product, right? 8 out of 10 said it. Let's go on that journey. And then when you're in that storytelling, when you're in that leadership phase, to rally a company behind it, to say, look, we spoke to 30 customers, 20 partners. We did a survey of 110 of you. Oh, that's part of change management because it gets people behind it because they know you've done your homework. It's not just a bunch of guys sat around a conference table and said, why don't we do this? We did our homework.
Amazing. I love that. I love the what do you call that? The walk me home approach?
Follow me home. We
Follow me home. Okay.
We watch
All
them
right.
use it, and we take insights
Yeah.
from there.
I had actually a conversation I had last week on this show with a product leader who talked about one of his companies was diagnostics for trucking, and he did a day long ride along in an 18-wheeler with one of his customers.
Exactly.
And I was like, that is such a great thing to do. This concept, maybe, like, yeah, maybe you're sitting at someone's desk and not riding along in a semi truck, but like, what a great thing to do. The ride along, the let me sit by you, let me observe, because so many, we start asking questions, our biases, we're leading the witness, all that kind of comes out. Sit back and watch them use the product. I love that. That's really great advice.
And it's important to know customers aren't buying your technology because they love you or they want to drive your revenue or help you go through IPO. They're buying your product to solve a problem. Or sometimes we call it jobs. Someone wrote a book on this. I don't know who.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But like they're buying your product to solve a job. Are we effective at solving that job? Watching them do it is a great way to learn.
Yeah. And speaking of, the sort of the jobs framework and the so whole strategy conversation as you dive into this, is there a particular, because there's all these different kind of like flavors and almost like religions of like strategy frameworks. Do you like a particular strategy framework? Do you have a preference? How do you think about that?
I like them all. I actually do think all of them are valid. But I think, anybody who just goes all in on one of these things and says, I'm a jobs framework person, or I'm a this, I think you take the best from each. Every company is different, and you have to build your own philosophy, not just steal someone else's, but they're all valuable. I like reading the books. I like listening to the podcasts, but I'm not all in on any one. I create my own.
It's so funny because all of these that you go over, we were big on Agile at Atlassian, and we kind of championed Agile, and whether it's, Agile, Lean, whatever you look at, they all of them in the documentation have some version of, hey, remember, you got to kind of flex this to your own needs and but it's also like the first thing everyone forgets, and people get so sort of religious about following the letter of the text with these frameworks. But there's a reason they all say, hey, you got to adapt to this and kind of make it work for you. And it's easy to overlook.
It's a lot of the basics. They all come to listen to your customers, collect data, market back, have a vision.
Yeah. Maybe one more in terms of product leaders, kind of communicating up the organization, working with the C-level, et cetera. How do you see folks go wrong, or what are the sort of common traps that you see product managers stumble on in terms of, kind of working with the rest of the organization and working with the CEO?
It's a great question. One of them, the trick of any product manager, one of these tricks that I've learned is when you're solving problems, you're solving for both the short term and the long term, right? It's easy if you're just trying to say, like, how do I create a product roadmap to last me 6 months? Or it's easy to say, like, I don't care about the next year. I'm going to solve for what I need in 2 years. You got to do both. You got to solve for both the short and the long term. And I think what I see is product leaders who come to me will only focus on one or the other. And you get them to just come in and complain about, we got this product in the market and I only have so many engineers to do the work. And I'm being buried with customer requests. And I don't have time to do anything long-term because I'm just buried under these customer requests, and then you have others who like ignore that and just want to focus on cool new innovation things for the long term. When someone comes to me, I want them to acknowledge that they're doing both, that they are got to solve for the short term. They've got to get certain things out in the next 6 months to beat the competition, to solve customer jobs, but they're also investing for the long term. And I think the best product managers understand both and come up with a plan that solves for both.
I love that. I kind of want to double click on customer requests because you all are obviously operating at a really impressive scale there. I'm sure you get a ton of feedback, requests, customer feedback and stuff like that. How do you kind of wrap your head around that and think about how much should we listen to, how much feedback should we be listening to, how much should we be sort of like reactive versus, kind of proactive in terms of what customers are asking for, drawing insights out of that feedback, stuff like that?
Before I answer that question, I'm going to tell you what I think is the most important trait of a product manager, and that is judgment, right? This is where decision making sits, and they have to exercise judgment because there is no formula on how much of your roadmap is spent solving a request that comes in from your biggest customer versus experimenting on a feature that may not even be valuable because it turns out you got to be willing to fail, right? All of that. And so a product manager needs judgment to be able to decide that. And we look at individual customer requests that come in an urgent way in kind of two buckets. Yes, our biggest customer will be requesting this, but all of our other customers are going to want this anyway. So maybe we just rejigger priorities to make this one really big customer happy, may delay something else, but at least it's something that applies to all of our customers and gives value to our business. And the other kind of requests that come in are just one-off things that just solves for that particular customer, no other value to other people. Those are the things that we tend to push back on. And we say, look, there's no reasonable expectations of what you're asking for should be in our product. None of our other customers want it. So we're not going to disrupt our roadmap for that. Why don't you pay additional for it? We'll get a contractor in to help create that one-off thing for you. And so again, it's all about judgment. There's no right or wrong answer because we all want to be responsive to our customers. But sometimes saying no is the right answer, which is really hard. And it requires very careful judgment on when to pull that no lever, because you can't do it too often.
That's a great point about judgment. And my big question, and I'll maybe kind of offer two different ways to answer this. I'll let you pick. How do you yourself screen for judgment from a product leader? Or put another way, how could a product leader practice, develop that muscle more?
So the way I screen for it is definitely by listening, right? And because these are the types of challenges that come up every day. And at ForgeRock, our product applies both identity for customers, like when you do online banking or online shopping, you're a customer of your bank or Amazon or whatever. We also do it for employees, right? So when you log on every day at work, right, you have an identity at work, and we do both. And so we created what we call segment product managers because we want to be market back, right? So you got to understand these are two kind of different markets. And what I do is listen to these segment product managers and how, when a challenge comes up, how do they deal with it? And I think the best way as a leader is by asking them questions, not telling them what to do, and say, well, have you talked to this customer? Have you thought about whether it applies to other people? And literally just kind of watching their wheels move and how they do that. Because I think judgment is, if you don't have it, you don't have it. And I think that's what makes a great product manager versus maybe a great engineer, a great salesperson, or a great customer support person. So I think a lot of that is asking questions and watching. But I do think there are these frameworks you can use to help that judgment skill. And, when I was talking about that, making decisions for short and long term, we also look at there are different stakeholders in a decision. Your stakeholders are your customers, your employees, and your shareholders, right? I'm not only a shareholder capitalist, I'm a stakeholder capitalist. And I recognize that we have different stakeholders. So I actually, in times of making really tough decisions, actually build out a matrix, short and long term, kind of on the left, right. And then my three top columns are customers, employees, shareholders. How does the decision I'm going to make impact? It may be really good for the customer short term, but not good for them long term because I'm not innovating because I'm solving all their short term problems. Or it could be really good for investors over the long term, but our investors are going to stay with you if you don't hit your quarterly numbers. So it's these frameworks that you can use, but ultimately, if you're attracted to being a product leader or product manager, you better have good judgment.
That's a really great, appreciate the deep dive there because that's a really great just way of articulating that. That's super valuable for the audience. Appreciate that. You touched a bit on your own product portfolio in that answer, and maybe we can dive a little bit more into that. Obviously, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. A company at your scale, you've got a kind of a broad horizon of cool stuff on the product front. So maybe instead of trying to talk about it all, I'll just ask what that's going on product wise in your organization is kind of charging you up the most right now.
I'm going to ask you a question before I answer that.
Yeah.
How do you like when you go to a website and you have to create a new identity and create a new password and go through a new password registration and remembering? How do you like that experience?
Yeah, not great.
Right. But we all agree. And I
Right.
think of the username and password as this really old, antiquated paradigm of identity and authentication. And I consider it a lose-lose scenario because at ForgeRock, we try to help our customers build identity experiences that are simple, easy, and frictionless, and safe and secure. And I think a username and password fails both of those tests because it's not very easy to use. I mean, you just said how much you hate creating new passwords, and everyone requires you to have different.
Remembering if
permutation.
have I used this service before? How did
That's
I log
right.
in the past? All of
That's right.
that. Yeah.
All of that is crappy experience. It's
Yeah.
also crappy security because most people like use the same username and password everywhere. They use the minimum one, they write it down. So we have this approach that's really antiquated because it's both bad experience and bad security. So at ForgeRock, we're really kind of driving a lot of innovation in this, where we believe that the era of the password is over and that there are so many better ways to recognize a user that are both better experiences. So you don't have to remember all that. You can just go into a website or open a mobile app and be recognized with a bit smarter behind the scenes ways where we can create your identity based on, collecting signals of both your user and your device behavior. There are a lot of open standards called the WebAuthn FIDO standards around how Apple, Google, and Microsoft can deliver you your identity behind the scenes. So what I'm most excited about is helping our customers like Geico, customers like Home Depot and USAA, these great customers, eliminate the username and password and give you a much better and secure experience on their websites.
How do you sort of think about the big vision there? And I can just hear in your explanation that your teams there are charging into maybe some known unknowns, maybe some unknown unknowns, maybe some territory that isn't fully explored yet. How do you think about product vision and product strategy for that, where it's like we might be kind of like chartering into new territory here, especially when we talk about things as grand of it is like a future without passwords? Like, and how do you sort of shore that up with like, hey, we've got a business, we've got targets, we've got expectations and stakeholders? Like, that seems like a big balancing act.
It is, it is essential to a successful company. And, I'm kind of old fashioned in this approach. I think every company starts with an exciting vision. Like, people want to go work for a company that has an exciting vision, right? And for us, that vision is creating a world where you never have to log in again. Like, that's that experience that's our vision. And then below that, we have a purpose. Okay. So we have a vision, which is this really simple. Then we have a purpose, which is to work with our enterprise customers to create identity experiences that are both simple and safe. Breaking that forced compromise of, you have to balance experience and security. No, you can have both. And then we have a mission statement, right? So we have that, which I won't go through right now, but we have this vision, purpose, and mission. And we constantly use that new hire orientation. We ground ourselves on that. And it is the foundation that everybody points to, because I believe I don't want to make a lot of decisions as CEO. I like pushing decisions out to the edge of my organization, to engineers on the front line are building the product, to customer support people on the phone, to engineer whatever it is, which means they need the context to know what we're working towards. And that's why I think being very clear on that vision for the future, the purpose and the mission. Then below that, we have a strategy. Say, okay, well, how are we going to deliver on that purpose and that vision? And that really is, to the point earlier, that's our product strategy. It's going to the cloud, comprehensive platform, scalability, all these product features related to that. And then that pulls down then, Blake, into what we call our annual goal setting and priorities. So we have a company set of key priorities and metrics, smart, everything's smart. And then that cascades down to the organization. And every single team has their own clear priorities and smart goals associated with those. And then those cascade into our personal smart goals that we use in our performance management. So that company framework has all got to be there. It sounds old fashioned, but if you dedicate the time and you do it well, you can start with inspiring people around that really exciting vision for the future and connecting what they do every day, right, down in the weeds to that exciting vision.
I love how you specifically call out too that you don't want to be on the front lines and having to answer every question and having to be personally giving, one-to-one guidance in all these situations, because you're right. Like, number one, that just like would be impossible logistically, and it would sort of stunt the business potential. I saw that, and I love that in the context of mission values, it's easy to overlook that. I really saw that play out really excellent, going back to my 5 years at Atlassian, where you really can have company values that folks rely on as these sort of like totems to help answer a question or steer the ship without having to ask permission or always ask for advice. You kind of have this set of rules or norms that you can rely on. It's like, okay, like, don't screw over the customer. Like, I'm going to do this, like, play as a team. I'm going to do this. Like, it's easy to overlook these, but I think it's important to note that, like, you call those out for a reason there. And the company mission and values can really be tactical. They're not just sort of like fluff, right?
That's right. That's right. Because it goes to like Toyota, right? And all these business books. Toyota was like, we want people on the front line to make the decisions, not the execs. And they need that context. And so, we kind of have these two tracks. We have that kind of strategy track around, vision, purpose, mission, strategy, priorities. Then we also have the people track. And we have both values and cultural, what we call kind of our cultural pillars. And the cultural pillars were developed because during interviews with new employees, you want to be able to make sure that people you're bringing on are going to be successful, not only for you, but for them. And I would get the question a lot during interviews, what's it like to work at ForgeRock? What's it like? What kind of people are successful there? And we wanted to answer that question all consistently. So we got a group of, by the end, we had over 100 of us, 150 people participating in workshops. How do we want to answer that question and that as you scale is important. In small companies, they don't want, that's bureaucracy, that's big company to define your culture. If you define it, it's dead. That might be okay for a 30 or 40 or 50 person company, especially pre-COVID when they were all together. But as you get so distributed and so large, and you're hiring people, we're hiring hundreds of people a year. You need to give them the roadmap of what it's like to work here and how they should treat each other and how they should be successful. Don't let them stumble around in the dark and learn it themselves. Give them the directions.
Yeah. I love that. I also love my favorite part about your Toyota example, and I think this is a great lesson for this kind of thing. Toyota actually gave frontline employees, factory workers on the line. They created a mechanism so anyone on the line could literally stop the production line. You got a multi-million-dollar production line. Anyone factory worker on their first day, they see something wrong, they see a mistake, they see something, they can pull this cord and stop the line. And like, what a great example of walking the walk in terms of, hey, how many companies say we're going to empower our frontline employees? But it's things like that where you kind of couple it with, here's a tactical manifestation of that. Like, any employee can stop the line if they see an issue. You don't have to run to a manager who has to get approval from his manager. By that time, this mistake has compounded over 500 cars. Like, anyone can stop the line. I love the sort of like juxtaposition and you calling that example out there, because it's a great point.
And it also leads into why somebody would stop the line. And then that leads into customer success for me, in that customer success mindset. You don't want to just watch crappy cars go down the line, because ultimately it may be a year from now or 2 years from now, but you're going to have a crappy customer experience, which is going to hurt your company's reputation and long-term success. So as long as, you have the right reason. And we try to do that. We have a GA process, general availability, product launch process. And it takes a lot of people to do it. Not only the product, but you have to have your support ready to support it on day one. You need your services organization ready to install it You need your documentation done. You need your training complete. So all those organizations should have that same veto power. So no, we're not going to launch this product. You may think it's ready from an engineering standpoint, from a product standpoint, but we're not ready as a company to create a customer success experience. So we're going to put a hold on that until we're really ready.
I want to dive into that just a little bit more because it's a great example. A big reason we exist as a company is because, this shift to SaaS and this sort of rapid pace of innovation software and SaaS companies are offering their customers now, where it used to be, maybe there's one big launch a year and we kind of have a year to all get ready for the big launch. And now with SaaS and the way developers build and the way, customer expectations, the speed of market, everything's increased. Things are getting shipped. There's more likely to be, hey, we're going to have a dozen launches. We're going to have 2 launches every month. We're going to constantly be, and with SaaS, you can constantly be shipping updates. How have you kind of thought about that balance? We want to be prepared. We want the experience to be high. How have you kind of balanced that out with how do we accelerate the pace of that at the same time?
And I hear that all the time, right? Well, that's an old fashioned way of big annual releases. Now we're in these sprints every 2-3 weeks. We're pumping stuff out there. How do we do that? And my answer to that is those old fashioned approach. They were really big releases, with lots of new features and functionality, because it was a year's worth of development piled into one. So, when you had to update training, it was a massive upgrade. Now we're doing these tiny little things. And so, we're releasing every 3 weeks, but we're not releasing much every 3 weeks. So the work it should take to get everybody up to speed on what that change is, or update your documentation, up your training material, should be small. And just like we're in these rapid, agile releases in our product, we need to be rapid and agile in everything we do. And that means agile in our docs, agile in our training, agile in our website. And that is hard because especially if you're a company like ForgeRock that was not born in the cloud, we've had to go through a transition. Companies that are born in the cloud, I think they probably have that more natively in the organization.
Yeah, it's a great point, and a sort of failure mode I've seen over and over again, where folks will think, hey, well, our devs have gone agile, so we're all set. And it's you're only really, you got to think of the full sort of throughput of the value you deliver, and you're only as agile as the least agile part of that system. You can't just ship agile to the devs or one part of the process and expect the rest. You're as agile as the least agile part. So it's a great call out, this sort of holistic approach there. I could talk about this stuff all day, Fran.
Me too.
I'm sure you could too. Any final pearls of advice or thoughts on all this before we wrap up?
The only one I would say is that as a product leader, as a product manager, I do believe in the kind of the mini GM, and that requires kind of awareness of putting yourself in the shoes of understanding how all the teams function to create a high performing business, and understanding that, I think, is really critical to a product manager's or product leader's success. Now, in most cases, those people don't report to you. So how you drive change, how you bring them along on this journey when they don't report to you, is the secret sauce, I think, what makes a really successful product manager or product leader. So first you have to understand them, to get to have them follow you, understand what's important to them, what their job is, what drives them, and then speak in their language. I think that really is important. If you're just into the technology alone, you're not going to be as successful as somebody who really brings the whole company along.
Answer this, fill in the blank for me real quick. I wish more people with this background would go into product management.
I would say, I think sales engineering is a very natural progression. But there's not one place. I've seen a lot of engineers go successfully into product managers. I've seen product marketers go into product management. I've seen a lot of SEs. I've even seen salespeople, believe it or not, make the move into product management. So it can come from anywhere. But I definitely think that if you're a young person graduating from college, don't go right into product management.
Okay.
Be an engineer, be a sales engineer, be a product marketer, do something, because you learn, you bring that into then the role of product management.
Excellent advice. Full episode full of awesome insights, awesome advice. Has been super valuable, super fun, Fran. Appreciate you being here. If folks want to learn more about ForgeRock, follow along with this journey, where should they head?
ForgeRock.com is the best place.
All right. Thanks for
All
being
right, Blake,
here.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks, Fran. Take care.